What is going on, fellow alchemists? Welcome to Quasi Astrology. Today we're doing Lilith in the sign of Libra. So Lilith in Libra, what do you get when you have Lilith, which is our emancipation, our rebellion, our act of stepping out of the mold of what is normal and what is repetitive and constant and redundant? This is the point where we find our deep primordial feminine energy, and if we work successfully with this, we can abandon and leave the scale of reincarnation or the table or circle of reincarnation and not return here. So when she comes into the cardinal air sign of Libra, which is ruled over by Venus, what do we get? Well, in short, we can be quite a tragic story if it goes wrong. In fact, in particular in the signs that are ruled over by Venus, because we already have the feminine principle playing its part here, when you bring in that deep extra primordial feminine principle and you add it to the continuation or the shading into the already existing feminine energy here, and now you have this deep darker part of the feminine energy also playing its role in these signs, what you tend to get is it can get quite tragic. It can get to the extent where people are all about pointing out flaws, because as Libra, you want to balance out the scale. You want to address all the injustices in the world. And as you can imagine, that must be very taxing for you because the world has so many injustices. In fact, it seems the more and further we go, the more and more pop up and make themselves present. And so when you have this placement, whether it doesn't matter what gender you are, but when you have this placement, you can have a hard time dealing with the injustices in the world because you keep trying to point them out and trying to deal with them. Maybe you can't deal with the grander injustices, but you try to deal with the ones that you can deal with. And it can be quite taxing when they continuously repeat themselves, especially in the guise of people. And so because of this, you could get insulted, you could get criticized for always trying to balance out and always trying to appease people so that they can change their ways, instead of allowing them to come to their own conclusion about changing their ways and acting as the example of what those changed ways would bring a result of. You know, people will insult you or could insult you and make you feel very small about all these things you say they should do, or all these things you suggest slightly in a diplomatic way because you're in the sign of the diplomat, Libra. You know, people could be very insultive of you or very insulting towards you. They could feel that you always think yourself higher than them, or you put yourself on a pedestal, when that's not the case. And so because of that, you might surrender yourself instead of fighting for the goodwill and the projection of humanity in the world and doing service. Because it's a cardinal house sign, it's also related to the fixed sign of Aquarius, which is all about service to humanity, service to the human race, and propelling us up the arc of evolution, the ascending arc, right? And so you can really give up yourself here. You know, you can really step out of who you are just because you're afraid of what people will say and do, and you want that appreciation. You want, because it's Venus, you want to connect with people. You want to be a conduit, and you want to embrace people through conversation, through relationships, through partnerships. And when you're pushing people away, it can be quite hard, and people might move away, and you might feel like, well, I need to give up a piece of myself that clearly means something very deeply to me. But because you do that, now you're basically open to ridicule, even more so than you were when you were at least carrying the shield or carrying the banner, the flag of these attempts to make the world better, of trying to balance out the injustices in the world. So the problem can be quite tragic, especially if it's in a woman's chart or even a man's chart, but a woman in particular, because it's that feminine energy, and women are very good at projecting that feminine energy. Men can do it, but because of the system of society, and thankfully that's changing and transforming as we move forward, men are getting more in touch with their feminine side. But the problem is that you could deal with or attract people into your life who are very dominant, because you surrender yourself, because you step down, because you don't push on. And the thing is, with Lilith in either Taurus or Libra, you could be exceptionally beautiful. You could be exceptionally sensual. You could just have that X factor. So because your appearance can stand out quite a lot with Lilith in Libra, you could attract very possessive men, very possessive people, manics, people who are obsessed with you, and that again can be quite tragic, especially if you want to step away from these people in your life and find your own truth and find your own way of working with this energy and champion specific campaigns that you set up for yourself or whatever the cause is. The problem is that these people could come in and they could try and get you back and, possess you so much that, you can't be with anyone else. You can't share your love and your ability to guide and to point out and to lead, because it's a cardinal sign. Leadership also applies here. You can have a problem where people will say, no, I don't want to share you with anyone. And if you don't want to be with me, well, then you'll be with no one. And that can be very tragic, and that can be, quite awful, really. But the whole trick here is to understand that this, again, is your point of emancipation and liberation. To really work with this energy, you need to finally accept all the deeper platitudes of yourself, and the things that you try and surrender in order to appease people is where you'll find your most strength. And whilst that sounds so cliche and redundant with Lilith, the thing is, it's so extreme, it's either good or it's bad. And so the cliche really applies here, that if you work with it productively, you will find yourself emancipated from the common karmas that you're gathering up in this life. And then if you don't do it correctly, you could find yourself, in particular, because it is a sign ruled over by Venus, you could have a very tragic Venetian ending. It could be very tragic for you. It could be awful for you. So the whole purpose is to try and gather yourself up, to try and stand your ground, and to really raise your banner high up so all can see that you aren't ready to falter on your ideologies, on your views, and you're willing to protect all those and do service to humanity, regardless of what the task or regardless of how hard it could be and what challenges you might face. So, fellow alchemists, that brings an end to Lilith in the sign of Libra. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. Don't forget to drop a like. And more importantly, if you have this position, which I'm assuming you do, tell us what it's like living with this position, how it affects you, etc. And I'll see you next time in the next video where I do Lilith in the sign of Scorpio. So until then, take good care of yourself.